Yet again, give yourselves a round of applause for that. Oh my gosh. Well, for those of you who are visiting for the first time, hi, my name is Heather, and I'm the music director here at the Sonoran Desert Center for Spiritual Living. Please stand and let's sing our opening song for today, Everything New, otherwise known as Bring It On. Bring it on, everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. I'm through crying, I'm through waiting, I'm through hoping against all hope. I'm through longing for something gone that'll never return. I think I finally learned to bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. I'm through grieving, I'm through dreaming that the life I had is never coming back. No more wishing on someone else's star that'll never be mine. And I think it's time to bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. I've survived many times before, yes we have. Broken hearts and slamming doors. I'll be alright, yes I will, once more. Just as I did back then, I'm gonna rise again to bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. Let's do it again. Bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new.
Thank you, Heather, and everybody out here. That was great. So all together now, we're going to say like this. Bring it on. Ready? Bring it on. Whew. All right. Man, everything new here. I love you guys. I'm so happy to be back here. My name is Jackie Peterson. And I want to remind you again that Dan and I are moving back here full-time next year. See, I figure if I do that, he is so committed he can't get out of it. You know, it's kind of like you get up in front of people and you do a testament, you know, well, you're on the hook, Daniel. So anyway, so I'm your trustee on duty today. And on behalf of Reverend Donna, who we all love very much, and the Board of Trustees who work very hard for you, I am privileged to welcome you here to the Sonoran Desert Center for Spiritual Living. whoever you are, and wherever that you are on your spiritual journey, you're truly welcome here, right here now. Here you'll be validated, supported, and encouraged to be all that you're meant to be. I would just add in there that no matter what your spiritual beliefs might be, or even if you have any, these statements are true. You'll be validated, supported, and welcome here. Our vision statement, I know many of you have this committed to your heart, so please say it together with me if you know it. Love in action every day and every way. It's something that makes us really special, because we know that each one of us, no matter what we do, that if we need something, we can call on someone else in the church and they'll help us. Right? Absolutely. All right. So we do express this love in action every day in every way by living and learning the principles of the science of mind. You'll find the declaration of these principles on the back of your program. So if you want to join me now in reading them. I believe there is an infinite intelligence operating throughout the universe. I believe this intelligent power is only good. I believe this intelligence expresses as me. I believe through my conscious use of this power, I create my life as happy, healthy, and complete. And so it is. So do we have any first-timers here today? Yeah, Michelle. Do you want to just stand up and tell us your name and where you're from?
Michelle Maurer from Durango, Colorado.
And are you visiting down here then, or?
Never stay for the winter.
Wonderful. Nice to have you here. This is another person that Byron brought in to see us, so he gets another hash mark up on the big board. Michelle, you got to come back. He wants those hash marks. So, is there anybody else that's new here or visiting for the first time? Okay. Well, you're all really new. Every moment of your life is new. And so no matter what you did in the past, no matter how bad it was, how egregious it was, this moment you're new and you can start again. So welcome. Yeah. So Michelle, please stay after and get to know us a little bit better. We have coffee and treats back there. And we hope that you will come back again. Thank you to all the volunteers that we have. I look around this room and I see faces of so many that I know volunteer in some way or another, probably almost everybody in here. And we can't operate without volunteers. Everything from setting up to kitchen to this stuff, the electronic stuff, the music, everything that goes on here. Really, we have bonded as a community because we get together and we care and we do things together and we get to know each other. So I'd like to direct your attention now to the announcements that are in the bulletin. And they're on the inside page.
Thank you. Everyone, please say this with me. Sing this with me. The God in me beholds the God in you. Namaste. to you. The God in me beholds the God in you. It is all for our greatest and highest good. The God in me beholds the God in you, and you and I are one. Namaste. The God in me beholds the God in you. It is all for our greatest and highest good. The God in me beholds the God in you, and you and I are one. Namaste. Namaste.
Good morning, all you happy people. It's a beautiful day. I'd like to read this first because many of you read it in Reverend Donna's announcement for this. It touched her heart and mine also. It's something we have read before, but I'll ask you a question at the end. This I saw, or else some inner presence made it known to me. The universe is filled with life. The air, the sky, the sea teem with intelligence, with majesty and might. And deep within me, some subtle inner light beholds and sees, comprehends and knows the all. It neither fears nor falters, but answers the divine call to be as one beyond the bounds of time and space, to overcome the bondage of this human race, and leap with trust undaunted, free into the deeps of that infinite sea, whose waters, calm, are ready to receive those who in simple faith believe. Beautiful. Makes me tear up. Who wrote it? Ernest Holmes. When did he write it? Sometime before 1926, when his book was first published. Wow. It could have been written yesterday by someone who was touched by the infinite. Don't you think? Right. Beautiful. All right, so with that, let's take a breath. Let's know together that this day is extraordinarily beautiful because we are in it and we fill it with love, with that divine power that moves and has its being in each one of us. We are so blessed to be here together as this lovely spiritual family. So as we celebrate this day and go forth into this next week, let's know together that we are guided by that divine movement in us, and that we spread our love and generosity and compassion and make the world a better place. So I release these words into the law that we know to be perfect, as we say together. And so it is. I'm going to light this candle. Because it just reflects the love that shines out of each one of you. Well, I'm going to read this anyway. I was thinking about me, since I really thought growing old would take longer. I really don't mind getting old, but my body is having a major fit. I used to be able to do cartwheels, and now I tip over when I put on my underwear. So that's my thought for the day. So more of nature. I don't know how many of you get the daily Om on the internet, but it's quite beautiful. It says, like birds flying in a V, when we feel the presence of others moving alongside of us, there is little we cannot accomplish. As they swoop, drift, and glide, inscribing magnificent patterns across the sky, birds are serene displays of grace and beauty. Long a source of inspiration, birds can be messengers from the spirit realm, or a symbol of the human soul as they cast off their earthly mooring and soar heavenward. An upturned wing, a graceful flutter. Also, effortless and free. More magnificent still is the inspiring sight of birds migrating, progressing steadily across the horizon in a solid V formation. That is a singular pattern, too unique to be mere chance. Pushing steadily forward, this aerodynamic V reduces air resistance for the whole flock. With the wings moving in harmony, the feathered group continues its course across the sky, covering more ground together in community as individuals. When the bird at the front gets tired, she will move to the rear of the formation, where the wind drag is lowest, and a more rested bird can take her place. By learning from the example of our winged guides, all of us can feel empowered to take on daring challenges as we charge adventurous courses. Feel the strength of others moving alongside you as their presence lends power to your wings during this journey across the sky of life. When buffeted by unexpected gusts, we can choose to find refuge in the loving shelter of friends and family. We may even marvel as an otherwise difficult day passes by like a swift wind, as a kindred spirit charts a way for us through the clouds and rain ahead. If your wings begin to ache on your journey, look around for somebody else to fly at the front for a while. All of us move faster when we move together. Let your ego drop earthwards as we all soar even higher. Thank you. Thank you. And I now take our candle, and I'm going to hold the Hiwas over there, and I invite you to come for treatment if anything is troubling you. Thank you.
Know me, know you, one. Know me, know you, one. You're the inspiration, a manifestation out of devastation, the truth. Know me, know you, one. Know me, know you, love. God no limitation. I'm a new creation. This calls for celebration. Born again. Know me, know you. One. Know me, know you. Love. I look at you, I know God lives here. I look at me, and I'm looking in a mirror. Peace or desperation, we can choose elation. Love is the foundation. So let's build. Know me, know you. One. Know me, know you. Love. Know me, know you. One. Know me, know you. Love. Know me, know you. Know me, know you. It's Know Me, Know You by Gary Lynn Floyd. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, sweetheart. That's beautiful. Well, good morning. You know, all this year we are going to be using the themes and topics that are found in our spiritual journal. So if you haven't gotten one, they're over there. They're $15. The proceeds go to help with our practitioner fund so that we can have some retreats and maybe a lunch or two. But it's going to help the practitioners, so please get that. And then also, it's got every place that you can follow along, that you can take notes, that you can refer to it later in the week. There's all kinds of ways to use it, so I encourage you, if you haven't already gotten one, to please do so. And the theme for the month of January is root and reboot. And as I said last week, I think of it as advice when I'm out of sorts. I need to go back to my roots. I need to go back to my source and spend some time there. And then reboot by doing something that changes the trajectory of my thoughts and actions so that they're more directly in alignment with who I truly am. And this week, our topic is the universal voice. We're looking at our intuitive nature and ways that we can both recognize our intuition and use it wisely. Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, says, the person who goes deeply into his or her own nature will find that God speaks in a language more subtle than the human language, without a tongue, in that universal language of spiritual emotion, which is instinctive in humanity and in brute, and held in common by all civilization, by all creation, by all people who have lived. The universal language of emotion, sense, feeling, intuition, instinct. Sometimes we call it conscience. Sometimes we call it a hunch. Sometimes we call it a vision, a dream. It makes no difference what we call it. It is a direct revelation of omniscience through us. Yeah, I believe many of us, and it's certainly true of me, are not in as close contact to our intuitive and spiritual nature as we would like to be. And yet when we are in touch and we're in that flow, it can bring us some amazing experiences. A bit after Thanksgiving, I received a summons for jury duty for January 9th. I pinned the summons to my bulletin board and I marked it on the calendar. And last week, the beginning of last week, about 3 a.m., I woke up in a panic. Something was telling me I was supposed to do something with that summons. I got up, took the summons off the bulletin board, and began to read it through. And sure enough, I was supposed to have filled out a juror's questionnaire online within 10 days of receiving the summons. Not returning the questionnaire could be punishable by a $1,000 fine or 3 days in jail. So I quickly filled out the form and returned it. And I found out yesterday that I'm excused. So I don't have to show up at all. But can you imagine, where's Reverend Donna? Oh, she's in jail. So I was very grateful for that little intuitive voice that, it wasn't little, it was huge. It woke me up out of a dead sleep. So they work. I've also had the little inner urgings, the tiny things that you can barely hear, but this one was pretty good size, and I'm very grateful for it. Dr. Holmes tells us that spirit is both an overdwelling and an indwelling presence, and we are immersed in it, and it flows through us as our very life. Through intuition, each person perceives and directly reveals God. We do not have to borrow our light from another. Nothing could be more intimate than the personal relationship between the individual and that divine presence, which is both the center and the source of each person's being. Our spiritual evolution is a gradual awakening to the realization that this spirit is center, source, and circumference of all being. It is in everything, around everything, through everything, and it is everything. Because most of us weren't raised with that kind of understanding. We have believed that the material world is the world of truth. We see it, we understand it, we use our 5 senses and our logical abilities to make sense of what we experience in this material realm. And we figured it out, at least mostly, what works and what doesn't. And so we try to do those things that make us happy and keep us out of pain and misery. But to know without doubt that what I can see, I can change by seeing the truth behind and within the experience is a new way of seeing, and it involves a very different set of eyes and practices. It is to come to the understanding that the world I see around me is not necessarily the truth. My experience, especially if it is painful, may be a fact, but it is not the truth. I call it a lowercase fact rather than a capital T truth. And I think most of us know this intellectually, but the tricky part is how we move this intellectual understanding into the heart, into a place of feeling and passion. So, and I call this movement from head to heart, I call it a cosmic plop, because I've watched students, and it usually follows this huge aha. I can still remember Rosie in one of the very beginning classes, and she was just frustrated because the textbook can be redundant, and it was saying the same thing over and over and over again, and she was getting pissed off. And then she came to me and she said, "Oh my God, I just got it." And that's the cosmic plop. When this intellectual understanding moves from the head to the heart, then something takes place. It transforms us. Truth has all the attributes of God that we talk about every week: love, harmony, peace, joy, abundance. And if that's not what we're experiencing, then we are in the realm of fact and not truth. We can't predict when or if we will have this cosmic plop, but we can prepare for it. I tell this story often
of a student who asked his master, "Is there anything I can do to make myself enlightened?" The master answers, "As little as you can do to make the sun rise in the morning." Then of what use are the spiritual exercises you prescribe to make sure you are not asleep when the sun begins to rise? So we have a practice that will assure that we are awake when the sun begins to rise. We have a practice that will be ready, that will ready us for those aha moments of enlightenment. We already know, and I hope that we engage in some of the more obvious spiritual practices, have time for quiet contemplation and prayer, read inspirational books and articles, repeat affirmations, take time to be in nature, give thanks for our blessings, practice forgiveness when warranted. And I would trust that these are part of our daily and weekly practices. And I've come up with a few more, which I think will help us open and be able to listen to that intuitive guidance that is Spirit speaking. And they are the practice of uncertainty, the practice of trust, and the practice of expression. So the practice of uncertainty. And I love this one because none of us like to be uncertain. You know, that's just not good. We want to be sure of what's ahead of us. And if we aren't, we take great pains trying to figure out what our next move should be. And I always get tickled when I find myself trying to figure out the next step. And I really do smile when I hear others say, "I just need to figure this out." When we have a desire or a need that we wish to be fulfilled, we are planting a seed. We are setting an intention by that desire. This is the cause that sets the entire creative process in motion. This cause, this intention, is then acted upon by what we call the law of mind. And it's this interaction between desire and law that produces a tangible result. Nowhere in there, in that creative process, does it say, try to figure it out. That's not in there. And within the law is what we often refer to as a sea of infinite possibility. In other words, the law has at its disposal an infinite number of ways to bring about our desire. And if we leave it alone to do its work, it will find the most perfect way of manifesting our desire, and that will be the result we will experience in our world of affairs. So this is where trying to figure something out messes us up. We are interfering with something that would otherwise easily bring us our desired outcome. And we've talked about this before. I think I've talked about it a couple of times, but it really bears repeating. I think it's for me more than for you, maybe. But when we are trying to figure something out, we are using only what we already know. That's so important. Compared to law, there's only a teeny little bit of stuff that we know. So by trying to figure out the best solution from our limited knowledge, we are telling the law that it can work only in the way that we have figured it out. And because the law can only say yes, then we've limited those infinite resources to just what we know. When we can give up our need to figure it out and be confident that by doing so we are allowing an infinite intelligence to be the source for the result, then we will have an outcome that is better than anything we could have thought up by ourselves. So to practice uncertainty then is to give up our attempt to figure it out. And this requires patience. You know, Spirit does not always work within our expected time frame, but it does work. So patience helps us to slow down, to move to a quieter pace. In his book, The Endless Practice, Mark Nepo says, while our being is born moving slow, the life that carries it flits like a hummingbird, rapidly twitting even when we hover. Yet when our body, mind, and heart are aligned, like tumblers in a mystical lock, something eternal opens. When our body, mind, and heart move at the same pace, which requires slowing down, we know that harmony of being as that pace of what is real. And moving at the pace of what is real can move us through uncertainty and open us up to the shimmer of spirit and the energy of aliveness. So patience slows us down so that we can hear that universal voice. We can hear what Spirit is saying. Won't be in words. Mostly it won't be in words. I've had twice in my life it's been in words. But most of the time it's just in this feeling, like dead panic in the middle of the night, But it does speak to us in a language without a tongue, as Ernest Holmes says. And when we've done this a few times, so it begins to be familiar, then we start to trust it. We start to trust the process. And that's our next practice, which is trust. As we slow down and begin to listen beyond the chaos, we start to trust. First, that there is something greater than me that is real. And second, that it speaks to me through my intuition, and I am guided by it to know what to do and how to do it. It seems paradoxical, but as long as we are fighting, blaming, or avoiding the experience of uncertainty, we are completely embroiled in it, and we cannot fully engage in life. So the way out of it is through it to the beingness that we are. It is to move from the fragments of chaos to the experience of wholeness that patience and trust provide. And with that sense of trust and wholeness, then we have the resilience to lean in to whatever life brings us. Because we know that we are guided by something greater than we are, we have the strength to be fully engaged, to be open and vulnerable in the way that a flag opens to the wind. And as much as we would like to be in this place of allowing ourselves to be guided by Spirit, to listen to what Spirit is saying, we don't stay there permanently. Life invariably throws us a curve every once in a while. But if we have proved to ourselves that this stuff works, then we can trust life to right itself, even if we feel momentarily capsized by it. I think our job on this planet is to not live a life of complete harmony and peace 100% of the time. As humans, I think we might be bored. I think we like a little bit of chaos in our lives every once in a while. But what we do need to do is we need to be like Jesus. We need to be in this world, but not of it. To participate wholeheartedly, which means to trust the opportunities that present themselves. To follow our heart, trusting that what we are risking by that gives us a greater return than had we not taken the risk. So we are in this world totally immersed, totally engaged, but we are not buffeted by it because we trust that something greater. I love the way Mark Nepo explains it. Following our heart means trusting that we will fit through the opening that we have to go through. It might be the narrow opening back to health, or leading a life of quiet secrecy to swim into the sea of love, or putting all of our weapons down, even the invisible ones, so that we can humbly shimmy through the tunnel of now to an authentic life. So when you and I become more comfortable with uncertainty and practice the patience that is required, we come to trust that no matter what is happening around us, there is an opportunity for us to discover a deeper meaning for our life. And by following that inner guidance, we come to our final practice today, which is expression. You and I need to be devoted to a life of expression. We cannot let our spiritual life become separated from our living. That's why we say over and over again, this is not a Sunday church where you have a sermon and everybody shakes everybody's hand and goes home and then, you know, makes a gesture at the guy that ran you off on the road, you know? Yeah. So we can't separate those two. It's got to be absolutely embroiled within one another. We have to join what we think, feel, and experience inwardly to the world around us. And it's from this expression that we become clear about what matters. Mark Nepo says, when we feel, think, and experience, what we feel, think, and experience is often inaudible until it's expressed. When I read that, I thought of Melinda, because she has said, I don't know what I'm thinking until I start doing it. You know? And there's such wisdom in that. There's such wisdom in that. He says the life of expression that moves through us allows us to hear a larger harmony. When we ground what we feel by touching another, the interwoven nature of things is amplified, and we're brought closer to what matters. When we don't give voice to what moves through us, we become entangled with life, but not connected to it. So understanding our spiritual nature allows us to be connected to everyone and everything. And as we express this nature through our love, our compassion, our reaching out, we become that beneficial presence that's deeply engaged in the world, yet we can also see the wholeness that stands back of it. Ernest Holmes says, when we are waiting on the divine presence and listening to the voice of God through our own intuition, we come into a consciousness of peace and a realization that we all belong to the one human family. To meditate upon the presence of God is to indraw the universe into one's own soul. And as we express this consciousness, we touch others. And as they are encouraged by our own expression of authenticity, then they tend to do the same. This is not something we learn, although we try to practice and understand it, but it's something that we are. So our learning really is a revealing of who we already are. That we are, this is our divine nature. This is Spirit working through us. This is the universal voice that is forever speaking to us. And our job is simply to listen. Thank you. Namaste.
Okay. You know, I was thinking about what you were saying about working within our own limitations and expecting the universe to respond accordingly. And I went back to my big little thought from last year, which was saying the sky's the limit is like saying, that you accept that there is nowhere else to go but the sky. Anyway, that's just my big little thought. All right. This is a wonderful, wonderful chant that I have for you today for our congregational song. It's actually not a standing song. You're welcome to sit and enjoy this one and chant this with me. It goes like this. We are one. We are one. I am you. You are me. We are one. And in this unity, we can live in harmony, and peace has come, for we are one. We are one. We are one. I am you, you are me, we are one. And in this unity, we will live in harmony, and peace has come, for we are one. We we are one. I am you, you are me, we are one. And in this unity, we all live in harmony, and peace has come. For we are one, and peace has come. For we are one.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, it's time for our offering. And I ask you to join me in our offering affirmation. I want to tell you that one of the things that we've been doing is to try to figure out a way. We've been using some of our, holding off on some of our tithes to others. You know, we tithe 10% every month of our Sunday contributions. And we have, for the last several months, have put aside a certain amount to go to Ukraine. And we've been looking for exactly the right place. Well, we found out that Dan Shearer, who is the editor of the Green Valley News, his brother is going to Ukraine, has been to Ukraine. I think he's back now, and he's going again. And everything he does, every dime he uses, is going to help the Ukrainian people straight on, right there in where it needs to be used. So they're having, through the Rotary's Shelter Box program, they're going to be having a meeting on Tuesday at CPAC at 1:30 and talking about it and doing a fundraiser. So we are bringing a check for a little over $3,000 to help that Ukrainian project. Keep in mind you're applauding yourselves. Okay, will you please join me in our offering affirmation? My gift goes forth to heal, prosper, and bless all that it touches. It is evidence of my conviction that God is the source and substance of my supply. I share generously of my good, knowing that it returns to me multiplied abundantly, and so it is.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed.
And again, thank you for your generosity that allows us to be a beneficial presence, not only to our center and our community, but to our world. Thank you so much. So let's close this portion out in prayer, and then please join us for refreshments. Practitioners, we're meeting for a moment afterwards to discuss our retreat, which is coming up in January, the end of this month. So I just know right now that there is one divine intelligence, one infinite wisdom that permeates all things, and that we have access to this divine intelligence, to this wisdom, because we are an expression of it. So I know that I can speak my word and allow that intuitive energy to do its work. And I speak my word right now for anyone experiencing any kind of a challenge, for any place on our planet that is experiencing upheaval and chaos. I speak a special word to those in the Ukraine. And I'm so grateful that we are able to do our part in helping. I give thanks that we are a spiritual family and community that cares about each other and cares about our neighborhood and our world. And I just simply know that everything that we send out through our thoughts, our words, our actions, come back to us multiplied, pressed down, and running over. I give thanks to be here today as we say together, and so it is. Thank you so much. May we stand and sing Stand.
So let there be peace. I am a stand for peace. Let there be love. I am a stand for love. Let there be joy. I am a stand for joy. We are living a new world now. So let there be peace. I am a stand for peace. Let there be love. I am a stand for love. Let there be joy. I am a stand for joy. We are making a new world now. We are making a new